Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is the 16th of August 2022 and we'll be discussing the following during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the 1 year after the Kabul administration changed, the US left and the Taliban, of course, then subsequently took power, and now, of course, the Afghan Taliban are ruling Afghanistan. What has happened in this 1 year? Whether it be the lack of assistance by the West, whether it be the economic and humanitarian state in which Afghanistan is currently embroiled in, whether it be the starvation and the situation in which the people are present in, whether it be the economic issues that the country is also embroiled in, which includes lack of money, lack of resources, lack of salaries to be given to all of those who are working in different fields. The list goes on and on. On top of it all, there is also the apprehension from the West when it concerns the way the Afghan Taliban are ruling the country, especially when it concerns the right of the women and the girls. Where is all of this going 1 year after the US left Afghanistan on the 15th of August last year? We'll be discussing that in detail in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the tense relationship that exists between the United States of America and China, and of course the desire by Pakistan to play a positive role to bridge these differences in the interest of peace and stability if the two parties so desire. This was stated by our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif while being interviewed by Newsweek very recently. And he, of course, talked about different aspects of the relationship between Pakistan and the United States as well. And of course, he talked about different aspects of his relationship vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis Afghanistan, and of course, he also discussed the war in Ukraine. This is going to be our second story. Then we'll be talking about a vaccine that has been designed by the United Kingdom to target two different forms of COVID. It has been approved by the British regulator to be used as booster jabs for those who are over 18 years of age in the United Kingdom. Whether on the one hand it is a positive development, there are skeptics who say that it is not going to cover all the different variants that are now present in United Kingdom and other countries as well. Then we will talk about India, where racism has again struck a blow. A young boy who apparently drank water from a vessel that was designed for a higher caste teacher has been taken to task, and a lot of people have taken to social media as a result and have talked about racism in India. Racism in India is nothing new. We've been talking about it, and this is just one of the many examples that are prevalent in the country. Then we'll be talking about two obituaries, ladies and gentlemen, two wonderful people who have left us. The first is Dr. Nafis Sadik, a Pakistani medical expert who became the first woman to head the United Nations Population Fund, which is of course a major United Nations agency. She passed away at the age of 92 and leaves 3 children. And the last obituary that we'll be talking about is that of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Sahab. Born on the 13th of October 1948, he left us on this very day in 1997. His 25th death anniversary is of course being celebrated across the country while remembering all the musical masterpieces that he has produced during his career and how he has made Pakistan a very important musical name across the world. People still remember him, people still recognize him, and all the contributions that he has done for music in Pakistan and across the globe. Let's come and let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns Afghanistan, the state in which it is 1 year after the US left it after 20 years of occupation. 15th of August 2021 was the day the US left. 15th of August 2022, 1 year after the US left. What is the state in which Afghanistan is present? We'll be discussing that in detail, but before that, a short report.
1 year after Taliban's return to power, the Islamist group's efforts to manage an economy already beset by drought, the COVID-19 pandemic, security landscape, and humanitarian crisis have largely proven fruitless. During the rule of Western-backed coalition government, 75% of public expenditures from country's $5.5 billion annual budget was drawn from foreign aid. As United States exited, international civilian and security aid was abruptly cut off. Afghanistan's assets were frozen and the new rulers were sanctioned. Since April 2020, the number of Afghans facing acute food shortages has nearly doubled to 20 million, more than half of the country's 38.9 million population. Afghanistan also remains in the grips of what the United Nations considers the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Although US and Taliban officials have exchanged proposals for the release of the billions of dollars frozen abroad into a trust fund, significant differences between the sides remain, and one sticking point is the Afghan women's right to education. On the international front, the Taliban has not been recognized by any country as yet. Western governments insist on seeing the Taliban improve its record on women's and human rights, as well as inclusivity in the government, before they can engage in any meaningful way and give the Taliban official recognition.
Hassan Khan, Foreign Affairs expert, joins us online. Hassan Khan, thank you very much to have joined us. Hassan Khan, it has been, of course, 1 year since the US forces left Afghanistan, and since then the Afghan Taliban took power, and a lot of apprehensions were there as far as the West is concerned about Afghanistan, especially when it comes to the humanitarian issues regarding the women and girls' education. In the beginning, the Taliban had talked about free press, it had talked about education, but then it kind of backed out of that and more. Hassan Khan joins us online. Hassan, thank you very much to have joined us. Hassan, 1 year since the US left, what is Afghanistan? Which state is Afghanistan in right now as we speak? If we look at the different situations that Afghanistan is embroiled in, we see much more of negativity than positivity. The only positive thing we see is more of stability as far as security is concerned in Afghanistan.
Thank you, Hassan. I think as far as the current situation in Afghanistan is concerned, it is very difficult to comment on it. The reason is that there are too much negatives. As Afghan Taliban have completed 1 year of their government in Kabul, but unfortunately, yes, the positives are they succeeded in having central government in Kabul. The entire of Afghanistan is under their rule. The second, most importantly, is the reports of the security situation improved in the entire Afghanistan. No doubt there are attacks from the ISKP or the other terrorist group which are residing in Afghanistan. But largely, if we look at the way Taliban are governing Afghanistan, so I think there are too many objections over it. Even if you listen to the Afghan political leaders, including the former presidents, the former ministers, the former political leaders. So the major, what we call it, blame on Afghanistan, the major failures of Afghan Taliban is, one, their interpretation of the Afghan culture, their interpretation of the Sharia law. Like, look, when they took over in August 2021, the decree, they stopped women from going to school. And though they promised that on 23rd March 2022, the girls may be allowed to resume their studies, but when the date comes, again, their Amir, Mr. Habatullah, he intervened in indefinitely the women education. The women were stopped from going to school. So that is a major objection over the Taliban rule, not only from the outside world, but from inside Afghanistan. You know, their ideologue, Sheikh Rahimullah, who was a few days back when he was murdered, when he was killed in a suicide attack in Kabul, he was the main ideologue and the main, what you call it, religious personality of Taliban. Even he was objecting over this policy of stopping women from going to school. And the second most important is getting recognition from the world or from the regional neighbors. So for Afghan Taliban, due to their policies, due to their attitude, etc., and the way they are handling the Afghan affairs, so I think the world is still shy to recognize them, despite the fact.
But you know, if you remember, Hassan Khan, if you remember one of the major press conferences that the incumbent foreign minister of Afghanistan had made, he had talked about developing relationship with all countries of the world. But under the current circumstances that you have talked about also, in part, because there are so many other angles to that, how can Afghanistan stabilize itself in the long run if it continues with the same policies?
I think this is $1 million question. Look, this Taliban promised with the world in Doha Agreement that they will not allow any terrorist group using the Afghan land against any other country. They promised that they will sever their relationship with the terrorist syndicate Al Qaeda. They promised that they will struggle to eliminate the terrorist group who are, I think, using the Afghan land against any other within Afghanistan. So far, they failed in it. You know, the killing of the reported killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri in a post affluent locality in Kabul. I think that exposed their attitude and their behavior to their commitments which they made with the international community. It means that they have not severed their relation with the terrorist syndicate, and it was Al Qaeda who was instrumental in bringing the Americans and the international forces into Afghanistan. It was the Al Qaeda attitude, it was the Al Qaeda acts in 9/11 that caused the Taliban to lose their command in 2001, etc. So I want to you look at their attitude with the TTP. TTP is a terrorist organization. It has killed, I think, hundreds of Pakistani civilians, Pakistani security forces. Even when the Taliban took over, TTP was more emboldened, and they started attack inside Afghanistan. And during a month or two of their rule, they killed more than 100 security people in the targeted attacks in the newly merged district. So I think how can the international community will recognize a group of people who have taken over the government in a country, and they are not allowing the women to go to school. They are not fulfilling their commitments of having an inclusive government, which they promised with the world that they will form an inclusive government. They promised that they will sever their relationship with the international terrorist syndicate. They have not done it, and that has been proved by housing, by providing the living facilities to a leader, to a top man of the Al Qaeda terrorist network. So I think, and they failed to harness the activities of TTP. And by the end of the day, they convinced Pakistan that instead of neither you take action against the TTP terrorists, neither they are taking action against the TTP terrorists. So they convinced Pakistan to let's negotiate. We will facilitate. We will work as a negotiator between you the two. So I think at the moment, I don't think so that any country will be ready to recognize Taliban in the way they are in the present shape.
But Hassan Khan, where does that leave the people, the ordinary citizen of Afghanistan that is encountering severe issues, malnutrition, lack of food, lack of medicine, lack of facilities? People are forced to sell their organs, even in extreme cases, sell their children. Is that what the people of Afghanistan were meant for?
I think this is the and all these things are caused by their attitude. They are least concerned about building the economy. They are least concerned about the health system. They are least concerned about the education system, because no doubt, as a Muslim, it is our belief that God is providing risk or food to every living person or living things. God is responsible for your life, how many years you will live in the world. This is the God. This is the fate already this time. But I think you have, being in governance, this is your responsibility to build an economy, to work on building an economy. And how can you build an economy? You develop an economy in an environment where you are shunning the international community. Currently, the international community is closely linked with each other. So no single country can say that he will work independently without having policies which are in congruence with the international order. So I think, look, they have only. I think this is only Pakistan's which is sharing the entire burden of the Afghan people. This 40 million people, their health issues, their education issues, their poverty, their food issues, because they have a collapsed banking system. The export, doing export or doing import, I think it's too difficult for the world to do that with the Afghan. So at the moment, I think this is, by the end of the day, Taliban has to recognize this fact that this is not just like you a small kingdom, or what we call it your domain, that you being the head of that area, and it's up to you to do whatever you want. I think to live in it with the international community, you have to honor the international commitment. You have to ensure that Afghan soil is not used by the international syndicate. You have to ensure that your people have equal opportunities, whether women or men, to work, to get education, to have access to health facilities, to have access to earning facilities. At the
That I
moment,
totally get. Hassan Khan, despite the non-compliance by the Afghan Taliban when it comes to so many factors that the West has asked, whether it be the United States or the European Union, the United Nations is still working in Afghanistan. There is a development fund that has been allocated for Afghanistan. Some of it has trickled into Afghanistan. But again, there are a lot of issues when it concerns that fund reaching to the common man in Afghanistan. Then there is a resolve by other countries also to help Afghanistan, but that resolve is also curtailed, as you yourself have said, because of the different issues that pertain to the non-compliance of different modalities by the Afghan Taliban's government. Economically, what can be done in your point of view, despite the current scenario in which Afghanistan is present in? What can be done to more or less stabilize the economy in such a manner that people at least get proper food twice a day?
I think this is really the Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan are really in a very precarious conditions for a number of reasons. Their own rulers are least concerned about the lives and the health and education of the people. Look, the international community can't feed, I think, 14 million people. You can't sustain them through aids. How many aids you will give to them? I think better the government and the international community, they work on letting the people earn their living. And I think keeping Afghanistan, keeping the Afghan people alive by doling out aids, I think that's not a solution. The solution is the international community and the regional leaders, they have to work hard on convincing the Taliban to have policies which are pro-Afghan people, which are pro-Afghanistan, which are in accordance with the international standards. Because look at Pakistan. How can Pakistan do trade with Afghanistan if you don't have, because trade is mostly done by the private individual. It is not the government job to do trade. It is not the government job to import or to export goods, etc. So for that, you have to create an environment where people can afford sending money to Afghanistan, or can afford to send money and bring goods from that country. At the moment, I think I'm least optimistic that Taliban, until and unless they do not change their behavior, they do not change their current, what we call it, this false ego or false arrogance, that they have defeated the international community, that they have defeated the US forces on the battleground, and now it is up to them to decide and work. They are comparing themselves with the Americans and with the Western powers, that look, who can tell America to do this or that? Can we tell that? Look, you have to look at your own situation. Afghanistan is unfortunately hit by the civil war for almost 4 decades. It's destroyed, it's totally destroyed, its flora and fauna are destroyed, its agriculture system, its production system, its business system. So I think it is a huge responsibility on the Afghan Taliban. And the soon they realize, I think the international community can just send aids to them. But as I said, 40 million people, it's a country of 40 million people. So it's almost impossible to keep them alive by just sending aids. So I think the better is the world should convince the Taliban. There should be more working on them, especially the Arab world, the Muslim world. They should come forward and they have to convince them that, look, women education, I think nobody is asking Afghan Taliban to do things which is not according to Islam, which is not according to the Afghan culture. Getting women educated, I think Afghanistan, if you look at Afghanistan of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, it was a totally different country. And still people say that women shall be allowed. I think there shall be steps shall be taken so that economy is brought back on track. If that is not done, I think I'm what you call it is I'm afraid that Afghanistan may not fall again into another chaos.
All right. When you talk of Afghanistan falling into a kind of a trap, there, and you talk about the situations in which it is because of the reasoning that you have put forward as well. When it comes to economy, you remember the $7 billion that the US had to return to Afghanistan, out of which 3.5 have now been set for the victims of 9/11. But what about the 3.5 billion? Have they yet been transferred to Afghanistan, in your point of view? Because the state bank in Afghanistan is in a very dire straits. There's not enough money to publish. There's not enough money to pay for the salaries of people. And we also, on the parallel, see the curtailing of press freedom in Afghanistan as well. This is also something that the Afghan Taliban's government had said, that they will give the press their due rights, which has also been taken back. A lot of anchors who were working in different channels in Afghanistan are now forced to sell food on the street and other measures. Can something be done for that?
I think already the Americans and the world, they were negotiating about the fate of this money, which has been freezed in the US banks or the international banks. But that incidents of Ayman al-Zawahiri in Kabul, I think following that, all the negotiation regarding this billions of dollars to be transferred to Afghan bank, that have been suspended so far. So I think that, look, I don't know, maybe Taliban in a much better position to tell.
But
That,
you understand
you know,
Afghanistan, because you much more than a lot of us do. That's why we are asking you.
yeah, it is their responsibility. I think they have to care for the people. They have to care for their own country, and they have to care. This is not only your interpretation of things. I think you may have the right to interpret the way you want, but you have to look at the world, how the world is looking at you. At the moment, even not a single Islamic country. We are talking about the developed worlds of the, let's say, to divide the world into on a religious basis, the Christian world, which is mostly the developed world. I think, leave them aside, no Islamic country, no Muslim country is ready to accept Taliban. There is a fear. The reason is that the way they interpret the Sharia, the way they interpret the local cultures, I think they're so far that they are not ready to accept others to be made part of the government. Uh, and every position, there is a Dalit sitting, whether it is the government positions, whether it is the political positions, whether it is the various positions in the states or in the provinces. So I think they have to keep this thing in mind, that they have been facilitated to take Kabul through dialogues of spread over almost 18 months. So they have to realize it's not only that they defeated the 300 plus million Afghan National
Of
Army,
course.
they defeated the 20,000 plus or the 30,000 plus international forces. I think they were facilitated by Zalmay Khalilzad in their talks in Doha. So I think they have to realize it. And for the sake of Afghanistan, they have to change their attitude. It's not the medieval era. It's not the era of 17th century or 7th century, 8th century, or 9th century. I think we are living in 2022.
22.
We are years. So the sooner Taliban realize, I think that will be better. Otherwise, I think the Afghan, there will be, what I fear is that there may be an uprising, there may be a movement started from within the people against the Taliban regime. So that what I am saying, that will be another nightmare, not only for the Afghan, but for the regional countries and for the international community, because another conflict, another uprising in Afghanistan, I think nobody can afford it. The world has been under an extreme fatigue for working in Afghanistan for 4 decades. You know, Pakistan, Iran, and the regional countries, they have been involved in Afghanistan for almost 4 decades. So I think no other country want Afghanistan to again fall into another chaos. Sorry. The better.
because it is going to have consequences for the region, especially for the neighboring country that is ours, Pakistan. So really, Hassan Khan Sahab, I really hope, as you are hoping as well, that the Afghan Taliban change their attitude as well, as far as so many different aspects of their management of their administration is concerned, so that A, the aid properly starts trickling in, B, the countries in the West start recognizing their government as a legitimate one, and C, that results in a more or less some kind of economic stability in the country that the people of Afghanistan not only have the rights to have but also deserve, and they have been wanting that since so long. So many migrants would like to go back to Afghanistan, but they cannot go back because of the situation in which their own family and friends are present in Afghanistan. So I really hope that the message gets across, Hassan Khan Sahab, through what you've been telling us through in this show and through what we've been discussing, that some kind of change happens, and that change happens soon, because as per a United Nations report, millions of Afghans are on brink of starvation as the winter approaches, and a lot of NGOs within Afghanistan have also asked for the assets to be unfrozen to end the near universal poverty. Kindly look towards that and make the necessary changes. Thank you very much, Hassan Khan Sahab, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the current situation in Afghanistan a year after the United States left Afghanistan, and which led to the Afghan Taliban gaining power in Afghanistan on the 15th of August 2021. Our next story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the tense relationship between the United States of America and China, whether it be economy, whether it be Taiwan, whether it be so many other issues that both the countries do not see eye to eye with. It is creating an aura of tension within the region and within the globe as well. In this whole atmosphere, our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says that Pakistan will be happy to play a positive role to bridge the differences between the two countries in the interest of peace and stability in the world, if the two parties so desire. I'll quote what he said. He said, if China and the US so desire, Pakistan will be happy to play a positive role to bridge the differences as we had done in the past. He was, of course, referring to how both the countries were brought together by Pakistan a couple of decades back. To discuss about that and more, we've been joined by Dr. Fazal Rehman, who is a senior analyst. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, in this tense era between the United States of America and China, the results of which we are seeing in different forms and manifestations, whether it be the Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States of America, whether it be the other manifestations of that regionally and through the different wars that we are also seeing, whether it be Russia, Ukraine, or the situation in Afghanistan, and so on and so forth. We see two different fronts being put on the front, that one led by the United States, the other, of course, by China. In all of this, how important are peace overtures, and how important could Pakistan's role be?
Well, peace is absolutely essential for the development and progress and stability of global order, and especially the relations between the two major global players. That is the most important relationship, I think, in international relations. So from that point of view, this is very crucial that they should remain constrained in terms of heightening the tensions. But unfortunately, what we see in the last 2-3 months, there is a constant hyping up of the situation, and there are tensions mounting in the Asia-Pacific region. And the cause of prompting these tensions is, of course, the United States gestures towards Taiwan. Although this heightening of tension has started a couple of years back when the trade war between the two started, but somehow there had been some mechanisms which had been pacifying the situation off and on. And it has not really reached a stage or touched a stage where one can say that, there are serious dangers of any conflict. But now what is happening after Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, now there's another delegation, and which has really annoyed the Chinese. They are very angry on these kind of constant provocations.
All right, but Dr. Saab, in all of this scenario, why create escalations when you can go about the same things through different maneuvers, through negotiations, through talks? And there's a direct and indirect effect on all the other countries of the world, especially the developing countries, including Pakistan. Do both countries, especially the United States, realize the effect that it is having, these tensions between the two countries?
Absolutely, they do understand what are the consequences, what would be the implications for the current global economic situation, especially where there is a economic crisis situation all around the world. They do realize it, they do understand, but I think perhaps they have a larger strategic designs in the region, and the timing is also very important when Xi Jinping has to once again go for the election very soon. So they certainly would like to, sort of test his, control over the power. They just wanted to create kind of a situation where his attention is diverted. So there are so many aspects of it which one can really point out in terms of why they have chosen this particular time for escalation and why they have chosen this particular time for sort of for provocation. But the Chinese are also, trying to give them a matching response by doing whatever they deem fit for the situation. And if this provocation is will continue, and then perhaps sort of the Chinese will have to also up the ante for this whole scenario, and which could be very dangerous.
But when you talk of the effects of this situation, there is a huge polarization. This polarization is going to have a huge economic impact, effects of which we are already seeing in the region and across the globe. And also, there is the Ukraine crisis that is happening on the parallel as we speak. Then there is COVID-19. There is an exacerbation of all of this that is causing a huge economic impact across the world. In this scenario, can mediation be given a chance?
Well, actually, I think that currently at this point in time, unless until there are some very lucrative, agenda items for both, I think the normalization of relations is going to be a very tough task. And especially mediation is not going to work at this point in time, I think, unless until there's a political will on part of both the actors involved in this situation. And so far, sort of no serious efforts have been made by any country in order to diffuse the situation. And the other thing is that any country which makes this kind of an offer should have the credibility, should have the requisite capacity to lead and to perform kind of a mediatory role. Any country cannot really do this kind of a diplomatic artwork which is required at this point in time. This is a very delicate situation. Actually, both the global powers' long-term strategic interests are in sight while they are escalating this situation. So I think, it will be very difficult for any country or for any mediation to take place at this point in time. And there has been, the Chinese side has always been willing to negotiate, to talk, and to maintain peace and stability. But the provocation is coming from the other side. And the other side doesn't seem to be willing at this point in time to accept any kind of mediation. There has been no such indication. Rather, there is kind of a prompting action, sort of taking place by them.
All right, Dr. Saab, there's another point in all of this as well. You remember in the past, the United States has said either you are with us or you're against. That was a very huge, big comment that we remember from the past. Is the United States still embroiled in the same kind of strategy with countries across the globe? Either you side with us or we will consider you against us. Can a delicate balance be held by countries that want to have normal, progressive relations with both the United States of America and China?
Well, actually, this question is for those countries who really matter in security architecture of Asia Pacific. For those countries who do not matter much, is this either or question is not really very relevant. So we have to look at the countries which are significant, which are meaningful in terms of tilting the balance in Asia Pacific region, strategic balance in Asia Pacific region, and which are those countries. Certainly, they are Japan, they are South Korea, Australia, India, ASEAN countries. So already, I think in different formats, the US has engaged these countries. For example, now the latest one is like, the alliance of chip making countries. The four countries, they are going to get together. Before that, there is a Quad, and there are certain revival of the old security agreements, like with Thailand, Philippines, and some other countries, Singapore. So we see that, this the beginning, or perhaps some analysts already are convinced that the new Cold War has already started. So in that, this alliance system is coming back, and the countries that matter will have to definitely take sides and choose sides. It will not be like that, they can use, fine diplomacy and try to please both the powers, because the antagonists are trying to have a very clear-cut position from the countries that on which side they are.
All right, Dr. Saab, which brings us to Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has been trying to forge good relations with both the United States of America as well as China. It has a time-tested relationship with China. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is just one of the different examples of that time-tested and strong relationship. It also wants a strong relationship with the United States of America, as per stated by our Prime Minister, who said Pakistan desires to build a broad-based and sustainable partnership with the US on the basis of mutual respect and mutual benefit. For a country like Pakistan, can this happen? Can this balance be achieved? And if so, how should Pakistan tread with it?
Well, to be very candid, on this, with China, we have had a strategic relation throughout, and we have had a very time-tested relationship. With the US, our relationship has always been transactional. It has not been progressive. It has not been, looking for some solid grounds to establish a long-term relationship. So as long as there are some issues like Afghanistan, like terrorism, which makes United States engaged with Pakistan, there will be kind of a cooperation. But once, they think that perhaps these issues are not there, there will be very less coordination and cooperation. As far as China is concerned, we must not forget that our security lies within this region. So we have to look at the regional dynamics, and we have to, engage with the regional countries, so that we can secure, in strategic terms, our national interests.
Dr. Saab, our Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari went and met with Anthony Blinken. There was a lot of talks, and there has been a desire from the US side as well to forge better relations with Pakistan on the economic front as well. Can that happen? Because you are quite skeptical as far as this relationship is based, which you say is transactional in nature.
Well, certainly it can take place, but then definitely there will be a quid pro quo. What are they going to ask us in return? We have to really look at the agenda items. What are we supposed to do in return for having good economic relations with them? So there is, because there is a price to pay for every relationship, and we have to really weigh and measure our response and our engagement with the big players, which have certainly global influence and regional influence too.
All right, Dr. Saab, there's also two major issues which, of course, embroil the United States directly or indirectly. One is the Ukraine-Russia war. The other is the situation in Afghanistan. How can Pakistan balance its relationship with the US in these two contexts?
Well, as far as the war in Ukraine is concerned, Pakistan's position is quite clear that we do not want we do not want to see escalation in the conflict, and we would like to see peace, stability returning to that area. And as far as the issue in Afghanistan is concerned, that is much more complicated. And it is becoming day by day more complicated, because it's not only a security issue, it's a humanitarian issue as well. And it is assuming more dangerous shape, with the passage of time, and not much response is coming from international community to address the internal situation of Afghanistan. So unless until there is a timely response from the international community, there is going to be more catastrophic situation in Afghanistan. So our response should be that, Afghanistan is our next door neighbor. It's a Muslim country, and we have been deeply involved in stabilizing Afghanistan for a long period of time. So we need to really look into the possibilities of helping Afghanistan in whatever way it is possible.
All right, Dr. Saab, also in this whole multipolar world now that we are witnessing, and the sides that are being taken by the countries that are important, as you yourself mentioned, what kind of future do you see as far as these tensions between these two, the US and China, are concerned? Are they going to become more aggressive, more apparent in the days and the weeks to come? Is there some chance of some kind of normalization of ties between the two countries? And if so, how can that happen?
Well, actually, I think that both the countries do realize the cost of conflict or cost of confrontation, which is going to be in terms of economic, sort of benefits for both the countries. But I would, draw your attention towards the architect of U.S.-China policy, Henry Kissinger. In one of his interviews a while ago, a few months back, he has mentioned that, there is no other way that China-US relation can be managed, but to remain constantly in dialogue and find areas of common interest. And that's a recipe. And he has also warned that if this continuation of dialogue and areas of cooperation, identification, and implementation doesn't take place, then a conflict is going to be catastrophic, and no country can, I think, neither the US or China can afford to have that kind of a situation. So already, the warnings have been given by the pundits of architects of these relationships, and they
So
understand
let's
the
hope that
dynamics.
at least the United States pays heed to Henry Kissinger, who, as you have said, that has been the architect of the US-China policy. And let's hope some kind of positivity comes in the coming weeks, because this current situation is not leading the world at the right place or in the right corner. In fact, it is going to create much more tensions globally and regionally for all the countries concerned. Thank you very much, Dr. Fazal Rehman, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the tensions between China and the United States of America. Of course, Pakistan has asked that if both countries want, it can mediate between the two countries. Nevertheless, as per Dr. Fazal Rehman, there doesn't seem to be an aura of mediation as far as these two countries are concerned. Let's come to our last four topics very quickly. The first is about the COVID vaccine. Now, a COVID vaccine that is designed to treat two different variants of the pandemic has been approved for use in the United Kingdom. The JCVI, this is a Spikevax bivalent original Omicron vaccine. It's a bivalent vaccine, is going to be available in the United Kingdom. Although the US firm Moderna says that it's going to have a good impact on the people who or have either been vaccinated, because it's going to be a booster shot, so that they can prevent themselves from the effects of other variants. But there are also those skeptics who are saying that it might help, but it might not help in the long term, because of the fact that the variants are mutating, and the new variants that are coming might not be as effective to the vaccine as these previous two were, for which this vaccine has been made. Nevertheless, a good step in the right direction as far as this bivalent vaccine is concerned. Next, let's come to India, where Indra, a small boy, mistakenly drank water from a vessel of a high caste teacher, and an FIR was lodged, ladies and gentlemen, an FIR. FIR registered in the case under Section 302, Murder of the IP, and relevant sections of the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act. Now, Indra is a child. He did not know that the matki, or the vessel in which the water is contained, that he drank from it. It was kept separately from others, and you drink water. Water is not a sacred liquid or anything of the sort. It's for consumption for everybody. But unfortunately, in countries such as India, the caste system is so strong that people can be, even children can be jailed for offences such as drinking water from a vessel that belonged to a higher caste. This is so sad, and it's such a sad situation in the whole humanitarian other issues that pertain to the world. This adds to the vows of the public, of the general humanitarian champions and those who are talking about it. Let's hope that they can pressurize India to at least let go of such dire reactions to children just drinking water. I mean, what more can I say? Last two stories, ladies and gentlemen, are obituaries. The first is on Dr. Nafis Sadik, who was the first Pakistani woman who headed a major United Nations agency. She has passed away at the age of 92. She has had a distinguished career. She has been the special advisor to the United Nations Secretary General and his special envoy for HIV/AIDS in the Asia and Pacific. She has been the executive director of the United Nations FPA. She has had the rank of Under Secretary General from 1987 to 2000. She was a graduate, of course, of Dow Medical College, Karachi. She also then studied at Johns Hopkins University. She did begin her professional life as a physician. She practiced gynecology. After that, she joined the United Nations in 1971, became a technical advisor to the UNFPA. She served as assistant executive director, and since then she has had the post, a very important post at the UNFPA. And of course, she not only has shone brighter than so many other women across the world, but has also highlighted Pakistan on the international arena, and she was one of the first women who did that. So we remember Dr. Nafisa Sadik, who has passed away at the age of 92, and her work will live on, her legacy will continue to live on, and the work that she has done as a woman, as a Pakistani, has always made our heads held high. Let's come to our last obituary, and that is, of course, of a very renowned, a world-renowned singer, Nusrat Fateh, who began from Pakistan and then rose to global fame. He collaborated with many important international musicians on the soundtracks of different films, with Peter Gabriel, with so many others, and is still remembered in Pakistan for all the beautiful work as far as the music and Qawwali in Pakistan is concerned. The 25th death anniversary of this legendary singer and Qawwal is being observed today. He was born on the 13th of October 1948. He left us because of liver and kidney diseases at the age of 48 in August 16, this very day, in the year 1997. He was, of course, born in that gharana where people used to learn Qawwali, and he excelled in that, and he slowly and steadily not only made Pakistan proud, but of course in the long run made the whole world proud as well. He made Pakistan's name shine brighter on the cultural front, on the musical front across the world. We still remember him, and we will continue to remember him. As I said, whether it be Dr. Nafis Sadik or Nusrat Fateh, their legends will live on, their work will live on. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments that pertain to you, us, and Pakistan. Stay safe, follow the SOPs, get yourselves vaccinated if you haven't yet. Allah Hafiz.